Oh, so that's how they cleaned up after the snap. Like the other show we review on Wednesdays, we actually opened this one with a cold opener as our heroines and villains made their way to some very bountiful mountains. The episode proper then brought us back to reality as the three cards recollected how their mistress abandoned them with a recap that took up less than a minute of the episode's runtime. It's almost as if they don't need to do overly long recaps, right, Toei? Anyway, they were kind of cooked considering that even curvy clouds start to get them off. Back at the remains of the Holmes Academy, the students, including Milky Holmes, were trying to find Henriette. Of course, she was long gone, and the only things they could find were stuff like curse boxes that contained samurai that I guess was a victim of the terrorists of his time. Fortunately, they were saved by their classmate Abe, who was a reference to Abe no Seimei, who was a court official from the Heian period of Japan, and supposedly an omyoji, who you could say was like the OG spirit detective. Anyway, Cheryl at least did find something kind of close to Henriette. Fun fact, camel humps are actually made from fat, so they would actually be kind of bouncy, just not quite as bouncy as, well, you know. Meanwhile, the three cards were found by the G4, and rather than just arresting them on the spot, Kokoro, of course, wanted to take a little time to tease them, likely to make up for the fact that they failed to catch their former leader. That line becomes a little less funny thanks to Takopi's original sin. Great anime, by the way, but I can't give my full recommendation because, well... And while I will say her trying to rename them was kind of funny, I will kind of more side with her teammates who are just not putting up with her nonsense. And to their credit, this is one of the few times in anime that I've ever seen them read out Miranda rights, even though they weren't questioning them yet, but it's still a fun little detail. Back with Milky Holmes, they had given up on trying to find Henriette, but just then, they spotted some jiggling boobs on the horizon. Oh, sorry, did I say boobs? I meant boobs. But yeah, as it turned out, the Lard Kid was there to officially announce the Academy's closure, which I think was pretty easy to make out, as well as to distribute transfer papers to all of the students. Yeah, in an actually really nice moment, Henriette had already made arrangements for all of the students to be transferred to new detective academies, knowing full well that her little crash out would leave them with no school to go to. It highlighted how, while she was rightfully pissed off at Milky Holmes, she also meant no harm to the other students. On that note, she did have a note for our main heroines too. Oh, no wait, I think I see something on the back of this and probably shouldn't read that out loud. Also, since he also went to the school, I wonder if Porky here also got transferred. Not that it really mattered, considering that he was on the fast track to a heart attack. And here I thought Chimera Beast had poor eating habits. Still, Milky Holmes did receive a very minute bit of good news, in that it turned out that the expo's location had been changed, likely due to the grounds being charred, so now they had an empty field all to themselves, like at the very beginning of this series.
Oh, the irony! It's too much!
Meanwhile, the three cards were still sipping hard for their former mistress, with them moving on to obsessing over curvy water stains. Hiroshimoto read that line way too naturally. I mean, we try not to judge in these parts, but still. Also, I love the subtle gag of Stone River trying to literally slap some sense into his cohorts, and he ended up hitting Rat twice after 20 unintentionally ducked his slap. Though eventually, even Stone River gave into his delusions, but hey, at least he went with a stain that actually looked like a female outline. Realizing that they needed some sort of outlet for their frustrations of more than one type, they decided to take it out on Milky Holmes. Back with our quote-unquote heroines, they were still sorting through the rubble and taking in how much they had lost, especially Nero. Surprisingly very topical. However, Cordelia wasn't depressed at all, as she claimed to have found Henriette in her heart. And sure enough, she even managed to rope her friends into her delusions as they admired the hills from the cold opener. As a result, the three cards discovered their mortal enemies in not exactly prime fighting condition. Every Japanese animator on their day off. But yeah, I think Cordelia might have inherited Henriette's illusion toys, as she even managed to drag the 3 cards into her flower field. As a result, they all ended up hauling around the camel who just kind of was still there. Though to be fair, I think he was trying to hide out from some old geezer who thought he could ride him.
Give me a minute. Any second this beast is gonna sit there and let me saddle up.
However, as time went on, the truth slowly became apparent to Stone River, who even decided to test whether or not they were in reality. Well, that's actually a really clever reference to Inception. Yeah, they're not senselessly name-dropping the popular film that came out a couple years prior, and even for those who hadn't seen it, this scene of Stone River using a sword to see whether or not he could force it to keep spinning would still probably make sense to them. In short, not everyone has to be like Rick and Morty and constantly name what they're referencing. Hey, I'm a YouTuber, so I don't have that much material anyway. Anyway, thanks to Kamaboko, Stone River was able to break free and also took Ellie with him. The two were able to see their friends getting a little too cuddly with the camel, with it even starting to look actually disgusted. Sad far as they can't really do much thanks to ruining his lungs after years of smoking. But yeah, this led to a legitimately good moment of reflection, as Stone River correctly pointed out how both of their teams actually need to reflect on their actions and not just get lost in their delusions. Granted, he could have expressed it a little better, and not in such a needy fashion. So much so that Ellie briefly got back her toys and swung him around like he was Bowser and Cordelia was the bomb. He literally cut through her delusions, which turned her into a demon, because why not? I mean, at least it makes more sense than this. Like, come on, everyone knows Vileplume can't learn Explosion. With that, everyone managed to cool off their heads, and Stone River shared his beliefs with everyone in probably the most pedantic way possible. To kick off the events of a really overcomplicated fighting game franchise. I mean, don't get me wrong, I get what he was trying to say, in that they needed to face reality and start from scratch, whilst also acknowledging the mistakes that led to Henriette's little crash out. But it was still hilarious when everyone ignored him for the remainder of the episode, even his own guys. Anyway, the thieves and detectives went their separate ways, with Milky Holmes setting up a very makeshift Neo-Holmes Academy on their former school grounds. Thus, the episode ended with Milky Holmes and Moriarty doing a group huddle. Though yeah, remember that one character with the very subtle name who appeared at the very end of season 1? Yeah, neither did I, honestly. This was a really good follow-up to a big status quo shake-up episode like in the last episode. Like, obviously, everyone tripping balls together and imagining everything around them as Henriette's boobs was funny, but it also ended with the characters having some rather meaningful reflections. It highlighted how there are indeed consequences to these characters' actions, and really, even a little bit of character growth is quite something in a show like this. As silly and over-the-top as the show can get, I think one thing that can be appreciated is the fact that there is some legit continuity to it all. Like, obviously, there was always going to be a fallout for Henriette absolutely destroying the academy, but little things like her making sure that the other students still had some sort of school to go to was consistent with her character. Likewise, it was nice to see the 3 cards kind of thinking for themselves. I mean, sure, they were still simping hard for her, but they also started to realize that there were other things that they could do for themselves and develop from such a low point. This is an idea that they will of course end up sharing with Milky Holmes, who, yeah, initially doubled down on their dame-dame tendencies when led by Cordelia's delusions. And yet, in a rather poignant moment, Stone River was able to make them all realize that they couldn't just completely stop in place and smell the flowers, and need to become detectives and thieves that Henriette would actually want to come back to. Now, of course, being an over-the-top comedy, they couldn't take things too seriously, and end up ignoring everything he said after, but still, he got the point across. And as a result, this is overall a rather strong character-driven episode to follow up on the events of the previous one, with some pretty hilarious gags, and even clever references. Whether or not that sword fell over, one thing's for sure, flowers can be quite tiring after a while. Thank you for watching, and if you're not lost in your own delusions, well, maybe you could get lost in some of our videos on this channel instead. We've got videos coming out almost every day, and we will start working on some bigger projects when we do get the time for them. Look forward to whatever comes next. Until then, though, for now, my friends, and, is that a tidal wave? Oh no, it's just the world folding in on itself like a burrito.